Okay, so now I want to take a look at the teacher of righteousness because we're after his identity. From the previous sections and parts that all of the authors and the standard understanding, the common understanding is that when the Dead Sea Scrolls are referencing the teacher of righteousness, they are referencing the founder of the Qumran community. And I don't think that's what the Dead Sea Scrolls teach us at all. The teacher of righteousness is exactly who we think it is, and that's Messiah. Messiah is the teacher of righteousness. Let me see if I can make a case for that here. Let me first open up. So I've opened up, this is the Dead Sea Scrolls translated, and this is the version from the translation from which I'm going to be doing the predominance of work. But I want to show you a couple of things before I even get started. First, if I go do a word search and type in the word teacher, it pulls up 41 references. If I do when I go through them and I analyze them, let me tell you where I find these references to this teacher of righteousness. Of the 41 references in this translation, 19 are in the foreword and the introductions. So 19 of them are dealing with explaining it away, where they are handing us information about the teacher of righteousness. We have 9 occurrences of the teacher of righteousness in the Damascus document, 2 occurrences in the Isaiah Pesher, which is the Isaiah commentary, 2 in Micah Pesher, 6 in the Habakkuk Pesher, and 3 in the Psalms Pesher. So we have 22 occurrences of this, the identity of this teacher of righteousness occurring within the actual Dead Sea Scrolls themselves. Now let me come back and show you the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English. And let me type in the same word teacher, and it comes up with 107 occurrences, which doesn't surprise me. Now, I did not go in and organize all of those, but it seems reasonable. Well, let me just kind of get an idea. So we got teacher of righteousness, teacher and his followers, teacher of righteousness. So there's an awful lot of this in the explanations. Okay, if why did it jump to 107? So if though, let's just go back to if there are 107 references to the teacher in the complete Dead Sea Scrolls, and we know that 22 of them come from the actual documents themselves, that means 85 times the discussion of the teacher of righteousness is handed to us in the complete Dead Sea Scrolls, which is a lot. Okay, so let me go back to our Dead Sea Scrolls in context. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to do a word search. We're going to go and look at the places where the teacher is identified for us. And let me remove this. Forgive me. Give me just a second here. Okay, so let's just start moving through this and see what they pull up for us. I really don't want to go through the forewords and all of the information they provide us. I want to get to the scrolls themselves because I don't want to get bogged down in their forewords and their ideas. But I'm going to go through this just quickly just to show you how many times. So I'm in the foreword. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That might have been 19. Maybe that's 19 right there. And that's how many were in the forward. And then we have, they do have, I guess this would be another one. Maybe this was 19. Maybe I miscounted. But I think this would be, this is in their notes. But from here, now we begin to actually see the teacher of righteousness in the documents. And by far and away, the most prevalent and the most meaningful of all of these documents is the Damascus document. And I'll show you in a minute why that's true. So I'm going to, if you remember in the previous section, I read this opening early part from the New Translation version, but here we're going to read it in the Damascus document from the Dead Sea Scrolls translated, which I think is a little more literal and um, a better reading. And let me just kind of share what we're getting at here. So I'll just read for you in the Damascus document, blank. And now listen, all those who know justice and understand the actions of Elohim, for he has a dispute with all flesh and will carry out judgment on all those who spurn him. For when they were unfaithful in forsaking him, he hid his face from Israel and from his sanctuary, and delivered them up to the sword. However, when he remembered the covenant of the very first, he saved a remnant for Israel and did not deliver them up to destruction. And at the moment of wrath, 390 years after having delivered them up into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, he visited them and caused to sprout from Israel and from Aaron a shoot of the planting, in order to possess his land and to become fat with the good things of his soil. And they realized their sin and knew that they were guilty men. But they were like blind persons and like those who grope for the path over 20 years. And Elohim appraised their deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart, and raised up for them a teacher of righteousness in order to direct them in the path of his heart. And he made known to the last generations what he had done for the last generation, the congregation of traitors. These are the ones who stray from the path. This is the time about which it has been written, like a stray heifer so has Israel strayed. When the scoffer arose who scattered the waters of lies over Israel and made them veer off into a wilderness without a path, flattening the everlasting heights, diverging from tracks of justice, and removing the boundary with which the very first had marked his inheritance. Okay, so that is our first occurrence of the teacher of righteousness within the scrolls. And this is what they offer up as evidence that it must be the founder of the Qumran community. And they do this because they take this 390 years from Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, subtract it from 586 to come up with I think it's 195 or 196, and then they take this 20 years and add it to come up with 175 and think that the teacher of righteousness was raised up literally in 175. And but in my mind, they're misreading this. First of all, I'm not 100% sure that when it says after the 390 years, he visited them and caused to sprout from Israel and from Aaron a shoot of the planting, in order to possess his land and become fat with the good things of his soil. Well, to sprout from Israel sounds definitely like the Messiah would sprout from Israel, but Messiah doesn't sprout from Aaron. Messiah sprouts not from Levi, but from Judah. So I'm not 100% sure right here they are referring to the teacher of righteousness or the Messiah. I'm not sure. But he did cause a sprout from Israel and from Aaron, a shoot of the planting, in order to possess his land and become fat with the good things of the soil. Now, if that may be a reference to Messiah, but it doesn't have to be a reference to Messiah. None of this has to be, so far, a reference to Messiah. We have what, in Hebrew they don't put in a period, but we've got a period here now. But we certainly have a change of thought. And when they realized their sin and knew that they were guilty, well, when who realized their sin and knew that they were guilty men? Well, is it not? However, when he remembered the covenant of the very first, he saved a remnant for Israel and did not deliver them up to destruction. And at the moment of the wrath, so the remnant. He remembered the remnant and did not deliver them up to destruction. Is that not who, when they realized their sin, because that's what the remnant does, when they realized their sin and knew that they were guilty, as we all are, but we're like blind persons and like those who grope for the path over 20 years. Could that mean a literal 20 years, or is it a reference to, like an idiom, maybe something where it's saying, when they were guilty men and that they'd been groping around like blind persons who groped for the path for over 20 years, for a long time, groping for the path, versus a literal 20 years? Should we be taking 390 and 20 and adding it together to try to come up with the teacher of righteousness. Nothing's firm in that, just like so many scriptures. To have them take it and run with that so firmly is, I think, incorrect. So we have a period here, a change of thought once again. So we're not saying after 390 years and after they grope like blind men, in their knowing that they're guilty men, groping like blind men for 20 years. And God appraised his deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart. So this is different thought. When Elohim looks upon the remnant and sees that they have a perfect heart, a heart that seeks him with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, and wants to do Torah, wants to do righteousness, wants to do the witnesses, wants to do the testimonies. When he sees that, then he gives them things. And what he's always given the remnant of Israel. And if you spent any time in the old writings, you would realize that none of what I'm sharing with you right now is isolated to this. This is the messaging of the old writings. Only if you're not spending time in old writings do you not recognize what this seems to be referencing. So when he appraised their deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart, he raised up for them a teacher of righteousness. For what purpose? What did the teacher of righteousness rise up to do? In order to direct them in the path of his heart, in the path of his ways, in the path of the ways of Elohim, of Yahuwah. And he made known to the last generations what he'd done for this last generation, the congregation of traders. Okay, so they've taken this, what would be, when I see this, and God appraised their deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart and raised up for them a teacher of righteousness in order to direct him in the path of his heart. I hear Messiah because that's not the only place we ever see this. But I'm hearing Messiah and not the founder of the Qumran community or a priest or anybody in particular. Not a man other than Messiah who has been specially empowered to know the ways of Yahweh and teach the men of the community that way. No, Messiah, the sons of Zadok were leading the community. The priests were leaders within the community. But Messiah, the teacher of righteousness, was the ultimate leader of that community and all communities of faithful believers. That's what the Messiah is. All right, so that's the most important teacher of righteousness we're going to find in here, in my opinion. So let's go on to the next one. Now we see, and where are we? We are in, these are other references within the Damascus document. This would be in column 19, I believe, where they reference here, and it's not clear because it's fragmented. Let me just start up here. And thus all the men who, let me make it bigger for you. And thus all the men who entered the new covenant in the land of Damascus and turned and betrayed and departed from the well of living waters shall not be counted in the assembly of the people and shall not be inscribed in their list from the day of the session of him who teaches of the teacher. Well, that's not terribly clear, but it's suggestive that in the land of Damascus, who turned away from the new covenant, all who entered and then turned away and betrayed and departed from the new covenant, not going to be counted. In column 20 is the third one. It says of the unique teacher. Now they capitalize teacher. I don't know why, because they don't capitalize his all the time, when talking about Yahushua. I would say that the unique teacher has apparent application to the teacher of righteousness, but it goes on to say of the teacher, of the unique teacher, until there arises the Messiah of Aaron and Israel. So if the teacher of righteousness is the Messiah of Aaron and Israel, then that would not necessarily be the unique teacher. So while they're capitalizing this and making us think that we are talking about the Messiah here by capitalizing it, and the teacher of righteousness by capitalizing it like they did in the teacher of righteousness, well, if we did that, this would lend itself to the idea that there was a different teacher, a unique teacher, somebody unique that comes along and breaches the gap until the Messiah of Aaron comes. This, if you take this unique teacher to be the teacher of righteousness, then this would be evidence for there being a a founder of the Qumran community who rises up and leads them until the coming of the Messiah 150, 160, 100, almost 200 years later, I suppose. This would be, of all the things that could suggest that the teacher of righteousness would be the founder of the community, this would be it. But there are other things that work against this unique teacher as being the teacher of righteousness. And I'll show you what I mean here. Let me make it smaller again. Here's another use of the unique teacher down here where they did not capitalize. Why did they not capitalize teacher here? Let's go up to verse 13. And neither, let me make it bigger. And neither for them nor their families shall there be a part in the house of the law. And from the day of the gathering in of the unique teacher until the destruction of all the men of war who turned back with the man of lies, there shall be about 40 years. All right, so if this, now this is another parallel, if this unique, not capitalized, this one is capitalized. Why? Why the difference? I don't know. But if you read this is suggestive of Messiah here in this reference to the unique teacher. Maybe it should have been capitalized. And the reason I say that is from the day of the gathering in of the unique teacher until the destruction of all of the men of war who turned back with the man of lies, there shall be about 40 years. So let's play this out. Yahushua, if we're talking, if this is the unique teacher and Yahushua is the teacher of righteousness, the Messiah, from the day of his gathering, that would be his death. So he died in about 30, would it be 30 AD? He was born in 4 to 6 BC and then lives to be 33. That's 29, 30, around 30 AD that his crucifixion happens. So from the day of the gathering and his death of the unique teacher, the teacher of righteousness or the Messiah, until the destruction of all the men of war who turned back with the man of lies, shall be about 40 years. What happened 40 years after Yahushua's gathering in, after Yahushua died? 40 years later, we have the Romans, the Jewish-Roman War, starting in 66 with the final culmination of the destruction of Jerusalem and Israel in 70 AD, 40 years later after the death of Messiah. And so the destruction in 70 AD would be the men of war who turned back with the man of lies, which would be the wicked priest, which would be the wicked priesthood. And these are all the people who basically have joined with the larger society of Israel and rose up in rebellion. It wasn't really the faithful remnant that rose up in rebellion against Rome. They were kind of doing their own thing. The church was doing its own thing because by this time you had the community, but the community would have been the early stages of the church, and from there, and in Jerusalem, and through Peter and all the rest of the church is expanding and growing and moving out into the world. But who gets destroyed 40 years after the unique teacher's death? It would be the Jews. It would be what became known as Judaism, as they in their land rose up against Rome, and they were aligned with the man of lies. They were aligned with the wicked priesthood, and so all this makes sense. If this is the death of the Messiah, 40 years later we have the destruction of all those who turned back and followed the man of lies, which would have been the wicked priesthood 40 years later. And in this age, the wrath of Elohim will be kindled against Israel, as he says, there shall be no king, no prince, no judge, no one who reproaches injustice. The converts from the sin of Jacob, those keeping the covenant of God, shall then speak each to his fellow, each one to make his brother holy and set apart, so that their steps become steady in the path of Elohim, and God pays attention to their words, and he will listen, and it will be written in a book of remembrance before him for those who fear Elohim and think on his name, until salvation and justice are revealed to those who fear God, the faithful remnant. So this is what I was talking about. We have the faithful remnant that started in the community, spreads as Yahushua, Peter, and the apostles. But who are all these people? Who are the faithful remnant? The faithful remnant is what the church is today. It is what will be gathered together in these end times. But in those days, it would have been the church. We just saw the description of the church, in my opinion. All right, so let's go on to the next. Here we are in, is this what I just read? Unique teacher until the destruction of men. Okay, so here it comes down and it speaks some more about that. And all among those who entered the covenant, transgressing the limits of the law, larger again for you, and all those who entered the covenant, transgressing the limits of the law, when the glory of God or Elohim is manifested to Israel, shall be cut off from amongst the camp. So that if you're transgressing the law, you're going to be cut off from the camp. And with them all the wicked men of Judah in the days of the purges. But all those who remain steadfast to these regulations, coming and going in accordance with the law, the teacher of righteousness, the teacher of the law, and listen to the teacher's voice. I think this is the teacher of righteousness. You're listening to the Messiah, the teacher of righteousness voice. And then you're walking in accordance with the law. Assuredly, we have sinned, both we and our fathers, walking contrary to the ordinances of the covenant. Justice and truth are your judgments against us. Is that not the beginning of the Damascus documents when they say we are guilty men, and because of their acknowledgement and humility, he raises up the teacher of righteousness? Does this not sound like what we saw in the first part of this document? And they do not raise their hand against his holy regulations and his judgments and his truthful stipulations, and they are instructed in the first ordinances, in conformity with which the men of the unique one were judged. And they lend their ears to the voice of the teacher of righteousness. So here we are. Here's the teacher's voice, and they're lending their ear to the teacher of righteousness. And all of this is larger than just the community listening to this teacher of righteousness that would have lasted just a few years there. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else. And do not reject. Okay, so they lend their ears to the voice of the teacher of righteousness and do not reject the holy regulations when they hear them. So if you're a follower of the teacher of righteousness, the Messiah, I suggest that just like in the Damascus document, you do not reject him. You do not reject his holy regulations. Do not reject his commands when you hear them. Do not run off in the teachings of the church that his instructions are gone. They're dead. They're swallowed up by Messiah. No. The Messiah did not come to do away with the Torah of Yahushua. He came to fulfill the Torah of Moshe, the requirements for salvation, and then to teach us in the correct interpretation of Torah again. So if we're following Yahushua and following his commands, then we are directed back to the Torah of Moshe and all Torah of the old writings. And here, let's just keep going. So those who lend their ears to the teacher of righteousness and do not reject the holy regulations when they hear them, these shall exult and rejoice, and their hearts shall be strong, and they shall prevail over all the sons of the world when the judgment comes. And Elohim will atone for them, and they shall see his salvation, for they have taken refuge in his holy name. So Elohim atones for them through Messiah, and they shall see his salvation through Messiah. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, from here, we get into copies from Cave 4. So we get into the Damascus documents, but we get into other fragments. So we're at the end of the coherent, lengthy Damascus document. The rest of these are going to be from fragments, and as you expected, they are fragmented. This would be the first part again and all over again. And God, and they realized their sin and knew that they were guilty men, but they were like blind persons and like those who look for the path by groping for over 20 years. And Elohim appraised their deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart and raised up for them a teacher of righteousness. So this is redundant. This is the same thing over and over again. And here we are again, and this is, what are we in? This is fragment 2. Now this is all interesting. I need to come back, and I'm going to be reading this book in totality. And this is a fragment I do want to read, but have not spent a lot of time on yet, because in this appears to be another intro into the Damascus document that I haven't fully read. But here we get back to the same passage where God appraised their deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart and raised up for them a teacher of righteousness in order to direct them in the path of his heart. So that is redundant. That particular occurrence is redundant. And then I believe that is it, I believe, for occurrences within the Damascus document fragments. And we start getting into, no, I guess we have one more Damascus document, but the teacher should give, let's see what this says real quick, because that's not terribly familiar to me. Let's see. And if he carries out all that has been revealed of the law by the majority of the camp, the teacher should teach him and give orders concerning him, and he should learn throughout a full year. Okay, so I think this teacher would be a teacher within the community. There are references to instructors in the community as well. So the teacher of righteousness is Messiah, but there are leaders and instructors within the community. And this would be one. Actually, I think this is rules. This is, I don't know. I'd have to spend a little more time with that. But I don't think this is a reference to the teacher of righteousness, because this teacher should teach him and give orders concerning him, and he should learn throughout a full year. And in accordance with his knowledge, he will approach, and no one stupid or deranged shall enter, and any feeble-minded and insane, those with sightless eyes. Okay. It's fragmented, and I'm not 100% sure. Let's see what else we find here. Oops, I need to go to the next teacher, don't I? There's fragment 29, which is in the Pesharim, and let me go back to 28 and see where that was. 17. So that's what I just read. That's fragment 28. Fragment 29 is now in the Pesharim, or the Isaiah Pesher, which is the Isaiah commentary. And this is where you have people who are reading scriptures and then making commentaries on them. You have to take them for what they are. But here we've got in fragment 21, perhaps in a little while, will Lebanon turn into an orchard, and will the orchard seem like a wood? Lebanon are fragment. The teacher of, as it is written. So we have a reference to the teacher, but nothing clear there. On to the next one. Here's the Isaiah Pesher again, and fragment 1-2, and Jerusalem, and what is written. He carried, obviously there's a lot of blanks in there. He carries them on his chest and leads the mothers. The interpretation of the word concerns the teacher of righteousness who reveals just teaching. The teacher of righteousness, as identified in the old writings, is someone who does reveal just teaching. That's part of what the Messiah does. All right. That's all we've got from that Pesher, that commentary. Let's go on to the next. Now we're in the commentaries on Micah. And then we have from Micah 1:5, what are the high places of Judah? Is it not Jerusalem? I will reduce Samaria to a country ruin, to a plot of vines. The interpretation of this concerns the spreader of lies, which would be, historically, we would think of that immediately as the devil, Satan, our adversary. But in the context of a lot of what we're seeing in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they'll say that spreader of lies is the wicked priest. Since he has misdirected simpletons. But I think that's more appropriately going to be Satan, the devil, who has misdirected simpletons. What are the high places of Judah? Is it not Jerusalem? The interpretation of this concerns the teacher of righteousness who teaches the law to his council and to all those volunteering to join the chosen of Elohim, carrying out the law in the council of the community, those who will be saved on the day of judgment. Okay. That one could probably, you could make a case for this being the teacher of righteousness being somebody residing in the community and giving some, because we've got the council of community here, but the community is also the chosen, the elect, the church. So that's not conclusive. Here we got another fragment. It's pretty much the same, I think. Its interpretation concerns the priests of Jerusalem since they misdirect. Okay, So there would be, they're interpreting the priests of Jerusalem back. And I would say you could tie where I just said this might have been Satan, it now could be the priests of Jerusalem, which would be the wicked priests, because it goes on to say, since they misdirect their enemies. So this could be, the priest could be the spreader of lies. I don't know. It's not clear enough. It's too fragmented. Barefoot and naked I will mourn, as jackals and as ostrich young moan. For it has come as far as Judah has reached, as far as the gate of my people, as far as Jerusalem. The interpretation concerns the teacher of righteousness, since he will judge his enemies. Okay, when we talk about the teacher of righteousness judging his enemies, if that's the Messiah, we know the Messiah is going to judge his enemies, which is really all of the world, the Gentiles of the world. So that would be an apparent reference to the Messiah. Now we're in the, I'm sorry, let me go to the next one, which would be, yeah, this is the Habakkuk, and we've got 6 of them here. So we have oracle received by the prophet Habakkuk in a vision. For how long will I ask for help without you hearing me? Shout violence to you without you saving me. The interpretation of this concerns the beginning of the final generation. Upon them will shout out against, why do you make me see misdeeds and show me soil? Interpretation, God with persecution and betrayal. You set, obviously this is so fragmented. You set violence and destruction in front of me, and brawls occur and quarrels arise. The interpretation spoils and brawls argument, and they think destruction. For the law falls into abeyance, the interpretation that they have rejected the law of Elohim, and justice does not emerge as the winner, for the evildoer accosts the upright man. Okay, and then here's the teacher of righteousness in this interpretation. Its interpretation is the evildoer is the wicked priest, and the upright man is the teacher of righteousness. Could that be the founder of the community? Maybe, but it also could be Messiah. And the second one, you have reported blank. The interpretation of the word concerns the traitors with the man of lies, since they do not believe in the words of the teacher of righteousness from the mouth of Elohim. So the teacher of righteousness here, I suppose, could be the founder of the Qumran community, but if you understand the teacher of righteousness to be Messiah, they just simply don't believe in the words of Messiah, who is speaking, the teacher of righteousness speaking from the mouth of Elohim, which is what we understand the Messiah to do, the teacher of righteousness. Move on to the next. All right, here we are in another one where we've got, I'm not going to read all that to you. That was already too hard. The last one was too hard. Its interpretation concerns the house of Absalom and the members of his council who kept silent at the time of the reproach of the teacher of righteousness. Again, that could be the founder of the community, but it also could be those who kept silent at the time of the reproach of Messiah, the teacher of righteousness, and did not help him against the man of lies, who rejected the law in the midst of their whole community. You made man like fish of the sea. Potentially it could be either one. On to the next, and we're getting close. This is another one in Habakkuk. So that the one who reads it may run. Its interpretation concerns the teacher of righteousness, to whom Elohim has disclosed all the mysteries of the words of his servants, the prophets. For the vision has an appointed time. It will have an end and not fail. Okay. Its interpretation, the final age will be extended and go beyond all that the prophets say, because the mysteries of Elohim are wonderful. Though it might delay, wait for it definitely to come to me. Okay. So this could be, again, the founder of the community, but the teacher of righteousness we understand to be the teacher of righteousness is someone who understands, whom Elohim has disclosed all the mysteries of the words of his servants. Messiah, Yahushua, understood all of the prophets, all of the words, all of the vision of the appointed time. This is what Messiah knew. Are we going to apply this application to a founder of the community, which would have been a priest, and maybe he would have been skilled or a certain type of man? But this is so apparently the Messiah language. Let's go to the next one, which is just down. Its interpretation concerns all observing the law in the house of Judah, whom Elohim will free from punishment on account of their deeds and their loyalty to the teacher of righteousness. It could go either way, but that sure sounds to me like it's language Messiah. Here we are in, it's still Habakkuk. Okay, this is still Habakkuk, might be the last one. Its interpretation concerns the wicked priest, since for the wickedness against the teacher of righteousness and the members of his council, God delivered him into the hands of his enemies to disgrace him with punishment. So the wicked priest could have been setting himself up against the founder of the community, certainly probably was setting him up against the community itself. But in general, we know that the wicked priests were set up against the Messiah. The Pharisees and Hasmoneans were all set up against the Messiah. And so they did wickedness against the teacher of righteousness, the Messiah, and then and the members of his council. And so he was delivered into the hands of his enemies to disgrace him. Okay. We're getting close here. And then we are in, what is this? This is, I think this is Psalm. Yeah, the Psalms Pesher, the Psalms commentary. Here it says, its interpretation concerns the priest, the teacher of righteousness. Elohim chose to stand in front of him. He installed him to found the congregation of his chosen one for him, straightened out his path in truth. Okay, so we know from Hebrews that the Messiah came and upon his death became our high priest. And he is the one that now stands before, on our account, stands before Yahuwah, stands before Elohim on our behalf, just like this is teaching us. Its interpretation concerns the priest, Messiah, the teacher of righteousness, Messiah, whom Elohim chose to stand in front of him, for he installed him to found the congregation, found his church, found the remnant, found the faithful remnant, the congregation of his chosen ones for him, and straightened out his path and in truth. I think that is very messianic. Okay, so we have now, this is another Psalm Pesher. And my tongue is the pen of a speedy scribe. Its interpretation concerns a teacher of righteousness. I don't really know what that means. And last one is in this another Psalm Pesher. Was there three? Yeah, there are three Psalm Pesher. And the four of the teacher of righteousness, priest in the final era. So here's the teacher of righteousness, priest in the final era, and that era, and that's what we understand the Messiah to be, our priest, our high priest, to stand forever before Elohim on our behalf. So from the scrolls themselves, I'm going to say it sure seems evidential that the teacher of righteousness is Messiah. And not, while there are certain passages that could be, if your bent is, and if you're going to presume that you've got Essenes in this group of Essenes, and that some founder came along to help lead them, and that founder of the Essenes would have been the teacher of righteousness. If you start there, because that's the narrative you were given, I suppose you could find reason to interpret some of this as the founder of the community. But having read the old writings and all of the covenantal, all of the messianic prophecies and different things, you recognize who the teacher of righteousness is and the role he plays, and you recognize the references in these Dead Sea Scrolls to it's messianic, and I think that's okay. So now let's turn our attention to scriptures. What happens if we go seeking the teacher of righteousness in scriptures? So I've gone to the Yah scriptures because I've got a PDF document that's quite searchable, and I'm pretty solid that they are a fairly literal translation. So if you can see the screen here, I've typed in teacher into my search, and there are 75 occurrences in 2,847 pages of scripture in these Yah scriptures. And let's just go through them. We're not going to go through all of them. Not going to go through all of them. We're going to go through them in the old writings, and then in the new writings, we're going to be able to read 4 or 5 of them and get the idea, because Yeshua is referred to as teacher over and over and over again. The teacher of righteousness, when he's here, is called teacher over and over again. Okay, but let's just start in the old writings. Let's start with the first one. Let's go to 1 and go to the first one. So first we got footnotes. We're not going to count that. And we go to Isaiah. The first one up is Isaiah. Let me So we're in Isaiah. What would this be? This is Isaiah 30. And it reads like this. Verse 20, though Yahuwah gave you bread of adversity and water of affliction, your teacher shall no longer be hidden. It doesn't say teacher of righteousness. It's capitalized, but your teacher. Everybody kind of understands that to be the Messiah. Though Yahuwah gave you the bread of adversity, who is he giving the bread of adversity? Israel, and even the faithful remnant, because the faithful remnant suffer as everybody sins. The faithful remnant suffers right along with them. And while we were given the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, our teacher shall no longer be hidden. Your eyes shall see your teacher. The teacher's coming. We all understand that to be messianic. So it doesn't say teacher of righteousness, but we definitely have a teacher reference in the old writings that is messianic. Work our way through. There's the second and third one. Now we're in Joel, and here's your teacher of righteousness. This is it the second chapter of Joel? I believe it is the second chapter. Second chapter of Joel. And this is the only in Scripture teacher of righteousness that I can find, but it's also messianic. So chapter 2, verse 23, and you, children of Zion, be glad. Children of Zion is Israel. This is the faithful remnant. The children of Zion, the New Jerusalem, Mount Zion, what's coming. The chosen are the children of Zion, because that is our future abode. And you, children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in Yahuwah your Elohim, for he shall give you the teacher of righteousness, and cause the rain to come down for you, the former rain and the latter rain, as before. Does that not sound like the Damascus document? Is that not what we read? In fact, give me just a second. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. And you, children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in Yahuwah your Elohim, for he shall give you the teacher of righteousness. Let me go read the Damascus documents again. And Elohim appraised their deeds because they sought him with a perfect heart. And who seeks him with a perfect heart? The children of Zion. If you seek him with a perfect heart and you seek his ways, you will be a children of Zion. So, because they sought him with a perfect heart and raised up for them a teacher of righteousness. Here we are in Joel, for he shall give you the teacher of righteousness. Here in the Damascus documents, he raised up for them a teacher of righteousness. Can we not see the parallel? I mean, we can interpret the Dead Sea Scrolls. If the community is the faithful remnant, and the Dead Sea Scrolls are the library of the faithful remnant, and if the Damascus document becomes scripture, if it is scripture, even if it doesn't rise to the level of scripture, it's clearly writing from members, somebody who's within that community and prophesying by all appearances. But when it says teacher of righteousness, they already had, the faithful remnant already had their reference. They knew who the teacher of righteousness was, and it's Messiah. So there's no reason for us to start seeking something other, especially the way that's written in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's no reason for us to start seeking a different teacher of righteousness other than Messiah. It's not going to be the founder of the community, even if you could take certain passages and find a way to apply it in the context of the narrative that you would be applying if you were following their lead. You maybe could find a way to justify it, but it's not the natural reading for all these people who understood who the teacher is. We all understand who the teacher is. All right, so here's the teacher of righteousness. Now we're in Habakkuk. Okay, I don't think this has anything to do with the teacher of righteousness. Of what use for its maker has carved it, a molded image and a teacher of falsehood. Okay, that's not Messiah. Woe to him who says to the wood, awake, is it a teacher? Okay, so these two have nothing to do with Messiah. Now this one does. This is Psalm 84. How lovely are your Mishkanath, which are your commandments of Yahuwah of hosts. O Yahuwah of hosts, my being has longed and even fainted for the courts of Yahuwah. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living El. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she has put her young ones. Your altars, O Yahuwah of hosts, my sovereign and my Elohim. Baruch are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Selah. Baruch Blessed is the man whose strength is in you. Highways are in their heart. Passing through the valley of weeping, they make it a fountain. The teacher covers it with barakot, which are blessings. So the teacher, the Messiah, our teacher, covers all that we do, the fountain, covers it with barakot. That's a reference to the Messiah. And more understanding than all my teachers, well, that's I think a proverb. No, that's Psalms, but basically, this is wisdom talking, I believe. Your commands I have seen an end of all perfection. Your command is exceedingly broad. Oh, how I love your Torah. It is my study all day long. Your commands make me wiser than my enemies, for it is ever before me. I have more understanding than all my teachers. Why? Because he follows the commands, and the commands are making him wiser than even his teachers. For your witnesses, your ways, your testimonies are my study. I understand more than the aged, for I have observed your orders. I have restrained my feet from every evil way, that I might guard your word. Guard his ways, guard his orders, his Torah. Orders are Torah, commandments. All right. So while this is not teacher of righteousness or the Messiah, this is all referring us back to what a wise one does and what the faithful remnant does, what the perfect heart does when, if you want Elohim to recognize and acknowledge your heart and send you the teacher of righteousness, you need to be of a perfect heart, saying, I'm a guilty one, and seeking his ways and his orders. And I don't need to. All right, so this is not messianic. But CL, okay, beware. Where am I? What are we in here? This is Job. And CL is exalted by his power. Who is a teacher like him? Okay, so that's Elohim, and that doesn't necessarily, we don't always think of this one as teacher of righteousness, the Messiah. This is more of Elohim broadly, Yahweh and Yahushua, his Messiah, together being a teacher unto us. We receive our ways through them. Okay, the teacher with a student, that's not the teacher of righteousness. Okay, but here, now we've entered into the new writings. And here in Matthew, we have the first reference to teacher. We have a scribe, having come near, said to him, Teacher, I shall follow you wherever you go. Teacher of righteousness. References in the old writings, references in the Dead Sea Scrolls to this teacher, the teacher of righteousness. And now we're going to see over and over again how people who were responding to the Messiah, responding to Yahushua, refer to him as teacher over and over and over again. Teacher, Matthew, teacher. Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? There's the Pharisees talking. A Talmud is not above his teacher, and this is Yahushua talking, I believe. Yep, and it's not enough to become like his teacher, so that's not a reference to him as teacher, except for his role as teacher. And some of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. Does your teacher not pay the tax? Question again from who? Is that saying Galil, Ben of Adam's about to? Okay. When they came to confer, those who received the tax came to Kepha and said, Does your teacher not pay the tax? Again, a reference to him as a teacher. And see, one came and said to him, Good teacher, what good shall I do to have everlasting life? And they sent to him their Talmidim with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of Elohim. And this the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Okay. The Pharisees plotted how to trap him, and they sent to him their Talmidim with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are. Okay. Referenced him as teacher. Saying, Teacher, here's the Sadducees saying, Teacher, Moshe said that anyone should die, if anyone should die. Reference him. Okay. Teacher, which is the great command. But you do not be called rabbi, which I think, if that is, I don't want to overstate it, but I think rabbi, the term rabbi in the office of rabbi is kind of a pharisaical thing. But you do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher. There's only one teacher of righteousness, Hamashiach, the Messiah. But you do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, Hamashiach, and you are all brothers. This is Yahushua talking in Matthew 23. And then he says, go to the city of a certain man, say the teacher says, my time is near. So here he is referring to himself as the teacher. And they woke him up and said to him, teacher, is it of no concern to you that we perish? All right, so let me go through because over and over and over and over and over. Now, some of these are duplicates because we're in different versions of the Gospels. More references to teacher, teacher, teacher. So we're in Mark, so we're just barely getting through. There's Luke. Let's get through these various Gospels and see if there's anything beyond the Gospels. There's Luke, teacher, 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 teacher. There are many, many, many references to him. So now we're in Acts. Let's see if there are any references. You know, there are teachers, people who do teach, and that's what we're talking about here. Are all teachers? Are all we're seeing mostly here. Teachers of Torah. That's not a reference necessarily to Yahushua. Teacher of the Gentiles in belief. I am speaking the truth in Mashiach and not lying. A teacher of the Gentiles. So that's Paul identifying as a teacher to the Gentiles. Timothy. Now we're in James. Not all should become teachers. And so, okay. So we could clearly see that there are references to this teacher of righteousness in the old writings. And then we see throughout the Gospels that Yahushua, Jesus, the Messiah, Hamashiach, is constantly referred to as the teacher. I think the evidence is strongly in favor, especially when you take all the other evidences that point toward who the community is and other things. I think it strongly points to the fact that the teacher of righteousness in the Dead Sea Scrolls is none other than the teacher of righteousness in the old writings, which is the Messiah, and the teacher that came and walked around among us, the Messiah, Yahushua, in his time. So there you have it. There's a word study on the teacher of righteousness, and I argued that the teacher of righteousness has nothing to do with the founder of the community, but rather the founder of all things chosen, all thing larger community, all things church. That's the Messiah, the founder, the teacher of righteousness of the chosen. All right, thanks.